100% ground beef. You know, that's what it's. That's the inspiration for that. What the fuck have you got on? Okay. Hello, darling. First up. Yes, this is Astarion. Who's one of my all-time favourite characters to play. I have a production company. I was doing the performance capture in Hungary for Final Fantasy 16 when I heard on the grapevine there was this interesting audition out there for a fantasy game. I asked to be submitted. They sent me a pack of all these different races. And I realised very quickly that this is Dungeons & Dragons. It was called something else. It was absolutely like a tiefling was a devilkin or something. It's clearly D&D. So I knew it was going to be the Icewind Dale 3 or Baldurs Gate 3, I thought. So I got very excited and submitted 10 out of the 12 races, which I wasn't supposed to do, but I was like, I'll play anything. I don't care. I'll play a goblin holding a pint. And then I got asked to come for a demo for a vampire character, which I thought was a bad guy and was going to be killed off immediately. And then did that, went really well. Jason Artino signed off on me, as was Swen and Frang. Yeah, and then at that point, they told me it was actually a companion character. And it would be probably about a year's worth of work, and then 4 years later, here we are, darlings, here we are. So, I mean, when I was researching and developing the character alongside the amazing script, of which we didn't change much, actually, if anything, because we had so much time as well to build in such a journey, I was very lucky that I'm very well trained. I have a very wide craft. And so lots of tool sets and things like Community del Latte, mask work, method, Malcolm's work, Larbin with movement-based kind of like character building. And so I found I could use all these different tools to kind of build up this very complicated and very amazing character I've been given, and very lucky to be given as well. So I found even things like observing the stray cat that lives in my garden, called Cat, because I respect its privacy. And things like Alecchino from Community del Latte were very useful. 3 of my friends are in Astarion. A friend of mine who very sadly passed away very recently, actually, called Leendert van Nimbergen, who's a very amazing makeup artist, had this penetrating look and utter confidence in crowds. Giles Foreman, my teacher, who's got this incredible way of perceiving you and this loyalty and all these beautiful qualities that he has, as well as his speech rhythm. And also a friend of mine called Ruben Kay. Where have your theatrics come from, darling? Because he's a wonderful amazing cabaret comedian and singer. And so these people started getting into the role, and I was very lucky that I'm blessed with such good friends. I don't know if it was a standout day. It was a standout project, is a better way of saying it. Every day was amazing. Come on, darling. Astarion needs a new pair of boots. It went off. Oh, okay, this guy. It's Nick Lightbearer, who's like an old 80s, no, he's a 60s sort of has-been Bowie-esque Mark Bolan kind of rock star. I got to play in We Happy Few, which is DLC. Lightbringer is amazing. He's a really fun character to play. He's a total coward, a drug addict, an alcoholic, a womanizer, and deep down has some kind of mini heart of gold. Worked with Alec Franston on this project, and it was a really joyous experience because I like playing underdogs. I like playing the people that shouldn't be heroes, like the anti-heroes and stuff. And Nick Lightbearer is very fun to play. It's this idea of like, he's always like trying to not take drugs. So there's one bit where you hear him sort of walking along and he goes, "Not today, Nick. No, I'm not going to have any more drugs. I'm going to be very good and clean," or something like that. And he goes, "Oh, party favours," and just immediately takes a pill. He was really fun to play. And we got to see some really wild, wacky, psychedelic kind of situations with his ex-wife, who's also far better than he is, and basically was his manager and looking after him. So Nick was a great experience. Funnily enough, I used as reference point Frank Spencer from Some Others Do Have 'Em, and also Mark Bolan as a combination. So you end up with something like that, a little bit like this, and all that kind of stuff. So it was really fun. Yeah, I really liked it. It was a good time. All right, here we go. Elijah Kamski, the head of CyberLife. Deviants. Fascinating, aren't they? This was a really fun role. This actually was a role that David Cage in Quantic Dream gave me alongside another role called Gavin Reed. So I did 2 roles in Detroit, which was really fun. Full performance, voice, as well as performance capture. Kamski was really interesting. He's like a kind of mishmash of Steve Jobs, not really Elon Musk, but people along those lines. I had a lot of fun with him. I also decided that I wanted to de-voice him, Because originally I was going up for Gavin Reed, who's this kind of like East Coast cop who comes to Detroit, and he's a bit of a dick. Get me a coffee, dipshit. Get a move on. He's like that. He's got a broken nose. He's always in fights. That was the original character I was going for, and in the actual audition, David handed me some other pages and went, I'd like you to try out for this character, Kamski. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, great. And then I looked at David, and David was just looking at me. He was like, oh, you want to do it right now? I was like, okay. So I said, can you just give me 1 minute? So I read the monologue, this massive monologue. I was like, shit. I've got to try and work out how to build a character, flesh it out with enough instinct that I can commit to it, whilst the director is watching me read his script. So I managed to pull something out, and I went for something which I thought was interesting. The main thing was he was de-voiced. The reason being is that if you're talking like this the whole time and you know people around and everybody can hear you, if you're talking like this, people have to come to you into your space. And so the reason they do that is because now I have control of it. If you can't hear me, I'm not going to repeat myself. So that was an interesting idea that I kind of played with. They liked it, and I developed it further a little bit. I did this wonderful thing with my one of my acting teachers called Roberta Wallach. We did a full Japanese kimono dressing ritual, because I can use katana and things like that, but she loves Japan and she knows a lot about all these different rituals, like tea rituals. So we did a tea ritual and a dressing ritual in the studio just for rehearsals, so I could get into the mindset of this very structured, very organized, very designed, very otherworldly kind of mentality that's somehow not human, that's closer to being a robot actually, or an android, sorry. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into Kamski. It was very cool. See him again. Come on. Something else. I'm just gonna fake it. Clink. Ah, okay. Oh, okay. This is good old Nemi. This is Nemesis. Stars. So, interesting note, actually, I didn't do the voice for Nemesis. The Stars line was recorded by the audio designer, funny enough. But I did spend a lot of time going around the volume going, Stars. So, which was really cool. And actually, interestingly enough, I got to play 2 characters in this. I played Nemesis. I also played Nikolai Zinoviev, who was a ex-Russian mercenary, which was really fun. But Nemesis was really cool, because I didn't know I was going to play him until I got to Japan. I was working with my friend Steve Kniebly. He's an amazing director that I've worked with like about 6 times. He's like my Tarantino. Steve asked me if I could do it because I do stunts and combat and creature work. So obviously jumping at the chance to play more than just the one character, I did it, which was great. And we had a lot of fun. And the problem with Nemesis is that he's this enormous hulking monster that chases you kind of slowly so that you can get away kind of thing, and is devastating if you don't. But essentially there's not a huge amount to him, so I didn't want to make it a caricature cliche. I wanted to find some kind of motivation for the character, even if he is a hulking, mindless monster. And I realized that he's very similar to an angry 6-year-old, or an angry 4-year-old. So I thought, okay, well, let's play as an angry 4-year-old, but as opposed to being an angry 4-year-old, which limbs are going everywhere and you're falling over the time, imagine the angry 4-year-old is being placed inside the Nemesis brain, and he's angry all the time, and he's hungry all the time. So I used that as a kind of driving force for Nemesis. So if he wanted something, stars, it was very much like he wants to grab it. And although it sounds ridiculous, it actually really, really helped, because it gave me something just to play for fun, whilst doing this very serious, like dum dum dum, and smashing people and using flamethrowers and rocket launchers and things like that. So yeah, you never know what's going to work, folks. You just got to try it and throw it against the wall. Yep. Ah, okay. As if by chance. This is my old pal, Karl Heisenberg, who's a sweet kid, metal master, and magnet, and dashing with the ladies. I'd just done Resident Evil 3, and I was overlapping with Resident Evil Village pretty much straight away, which was very cool. Steve Kniebly asked me to come back and audition. Japanese executives liked what I did with my take on Heisenberg. We started with transatlantic, so I sort of used this voice like a Cary Grant, like a transatlantic kind of thing, you know, a bit over here, kind of thing, that kind of stuff. And then I thought, well, okay, well, what else can we add in there? Well, what if we make it more natural than sort of very slick transatlantic? And I used Jimmy Stewart's naturalism, like, Mr. President. And then on top of that, I thought, well, that's cool, but there's another side to him, this sort of metallic side. So we ended up, for one of the lines especially, let's see what you're really made of, like that. I can't quite do it at the moment because my lips are a bit dry. I used a kind of machinery sound so that when you hear the final line, which wasn't actually altered in any way, it comes across as this very metal on metal grating. And if you watch the video, you actually see it. And then I thought, just for S's and giggles, I'd use a little bit of Nick Cage in there. 100% ground beef! You know, that's the inspiration for that. There's some really weird lines in there. Buckle up, buttercup! It's really fun.
And you seem to be able to just go into character almost instantly. I remember lines.
Actually, the interesting thing about that, so switching characters, especially because I tend to do multi-role in a lot of characters, I'm very lucky that people ask me to do not one a supporting role or a lead role, but also maybe another role as well, is that I develop method acting, I guess you call it basic relaxation tools. So you can drop into a character by using certain things that will sort of help you remember the accent, remember the voice, remember the tonality, the musicality of the character, and also maybe the physicality. I played an ape in Planet of the Apes: Last Frontier called Bryn. My tool for that, for dropping into character, was very funny. So it'd be like, and I do that every time before a take. I gotta say, the crew at the Imaginarium was so generous. And the cast was so generous with me on that job, because that's what it needed, to drop into this animal that's 6 times stronger than a human but half the size, and just get into the physicality of the ape work, which we spent a long time working with Andy Serkis and also Peter Elliott, who's amazing, the godfather of animal movement in film and TV and games as well, I would say. Like a lot of my characters, I'm very blessed, I do full performance. So everything you see of Astarion, everything you see of Karl, Nemesis, is me. So I did all the movements for them, as well as the combat and stunts, and also the vocal work as well. With Karl, it might be that the line is supposed to be nice and quick, and there's supposed to be a moment here that you have to go to there. And what I would do is find a way to muddle it, as opposed to being with the actor, which is possibly what the stage direction would be, that I come closer. I'd actually move away. Then look back, really. How you doing, kid? So it'll be very much a kind of thing just to throw them off a little bit, but not so it disrupts their work. It's like in a yes and, so I'm inviting them to play with that moment. And I was very lucky that we had some really good actors. Todd, who played Ethan, actually was brilliant and rolled with everything, rolled with all the punches. So I don't like disrupting other people's work, but what I like to do is offer up the invitation to play in a moment and see what happens if they want to come along. And also the director will also say it's a terrible idea, don't do that. Or just shoot it again if it goes badly. We've got one last on here. This guy, really? Back in 2012, wow. 2012, I played on Hollyoaks, and we did a late night special, which was really fun, and I worked with a fantastic executive producer called Emma Smethwick, who's amazing, and she wanted to make it more drama-like, or at least the storyline that I was involved with, more of a kind of more highbrow drama, I guess. And so when I initially went for the role, I didn't really think much of it. I'm gonna be really honest, I was like, it's okay. And it was an interesting character, but I wasn't really interested in doing Hollyoaks. So I went in so relaxed to this meeting. And I started playing, I started improvising with the casting director, who's great, who's lovely. The thing that I didn't know was that a lot of people have been going up for this role, Simon Walker, who's an undercover cop, who pretends to be gay, and it all goes horribly wrong. Who's after Emmett Scanlon's character, Brendan Brady, who is this sort of gay, big gangster dude who's super fierce. Now, the interesting thing about Emmett is he's one of the most playful actors I've ever met and ever worked with. And what I didn't know was that loads of actors went up for the role. Nobody could really figure him out, how to work with him. Not because he's difficult to work with, quite the contrary, he's very giving. But he plays so much that people just get freaked out. Apparently one actor, I didn't know who, one actor in the audition went, I don't know what he's doing, like that, in the middle of the audition. So I went in very relaxed and playful, and they liked the fact that I was quite open to improvisation and moving things around a little bit. When it came to doing the role, Emmett was this whirlwind, this unrelenting force, and I thought, okay, that's interesting. I get a sense of who he is as an actor, as a person as well. So I'm going to do the opposite. He's going to be the unrelenting force, I'll be the unmovable object, and that way, whatever he does, I'm going to do the opposite. So if he would go big, I would go smaller. If he would go smaller and still, I would sort of let out some movements or just start thinking about some character habits to throw the moment off a little bit. So we worked incredibly well, and actually Emmett and I got on so well during that job. We had an absolute blast. It was so cool. Despite my reservations about Hollyoaks, I had a great time for about a year and a half, and I have to say it's one of the more fun jobs I've been on for quite in television, I would say. For a long time, so it was really great. I like any character that's well written and rounded and good and layered and interesting and allows me to have fun. There are definitely people I'd like to work with. I'd love to work with Santa Monica, Insomniac I'd love to work with. I'd love to work with Naughty Dog, Bethesda stuff. I love Fallout, man. I'd love to do that. And to be honest with you, I'd love to play Astarion again somehow. I would love to do that. That would be awesome. Like live action or game, I don't care. Advert for grape juice, I don't know. Whatever. I'd love to play Astarion again. That would be really cool. I actually played a fish in a tank. A mutant fish in a tank was my very first role after I finished Astarion for Warframe. And that was brilliant because Reb Ford, who's amazing, called me up and said, I've got this idea, I want you to be a part of it, I like your work. Just FYI, it's a fish in a tank. I went, yep, sign me up, whatever you want, whatever it is, I'm there for it. It's a fish in a tank. Let me play that, it's great. Brian Blessed and Mel Brooks was the combination for that one. So you have this, who's a good biped? Oh, Tinu! Like that. So you have this weird fish thing. He's not intelligent. He thinks he's intelligent. He's actually a coward. But he thinks he's this brilliant strategist, but actually he's useless. A big fish called Fibonacci. So that's great. So yeah, I get fish and sexy vampire. It's like pretty happy. I get the whole smorgasbord of characters. Yeah.